Welcome, chieftains and war queens, to the feral wilds of the mortal realms, because today we are talking about the Darkoath tribes as we continue our exploration of the Slaves to Darkness battletome that dropped in 4th edition Age of Sigmar. This wave of models and characters represents the latest releases for the Slaves to Darkness as an army, and without question are some of my absolute favorite models that GW has made. I mentioned previously in this series that this battletome felt like there were a bunch of different perspectives or chaos vibes within it. The higher level stuff being Archaon and Be'lakor leading thousands of ironclad warriors in columns. But then there's also the people who've just been trying to etch out a living and survive the age of chaos. People who have no interest in those armies, they just want safe homes and families. Which unfortunately, in the realms that are saturated in chaos, still means a life of violence. But it is distinctly different from the point of view of a conqueror. This is much more local and tribalistic structure. It makes up the overwhelming amount of mortals living in the realms, the masses who were left to fend for themselves in the long night as the realms were corrupted and mutated and filled with horrors. Thousands of tribes were left abandoned when Sigmar the Deceiver fled his army and closed the gates of Azir. And to them, to their perspective, after the Battle of the Burning Sky, he ran away. He left us. And so, most of these tribes had a very simple choice to make. You join, or you die. You become servants of Archaon that he can call up as he needs, doing awful things and making horrid pacts, or you just die. The people faced with this impossible choice were the very first Darkoath tribes. And that name actually is quite literal. It's a catch-all term for tribes of mortals who have made and are making dark oaths to the chaos gods. Bargains in exchange for power. Now, this could be, of course, power to beat an enemy army. You'll see that a lot with the rest of the Slaves to Darkness. But it could also be mutations or gifts that just allow your tribe to keep living. Never mind conquer anything, you just want to survive the environment that you're in. You can use chaos gifts for that too. And while that might be the origin of a lot of Darkoath tribes, it's not necessarily how they all are now. Because Archaon is calling out all the warriors he can as the hour of ruin reigns supreme, right? It is an all hands on deck moment, while chaos has the initiative, so to speak. And that includes all these people under his banner that just really are not super stoked. Or absolutely love it. There's a whole swath of what a Darkoath tribe could be, and we're going to talk about it today. One thing I want to add at top, during the entirety of the Slaves to Darkness series, I am doing a fundraiser for the Young Bloods Age of Sigmar event, ages 8 to 14 for kids, in 2025, and I'm doing, like I said, a fundraiser to be able to get the spearhead sets and all the things I need to completely kit bash them to the nines, transport it all, get all the stuff printed. If you would like to chip in just a few bucks to that, please head over to the GoFundMe I have linked down below. We've already met our goal, which was deeply humbling because I've raised it twice. But I'm going to leave it up there because every single dollar that goes to that GoFundMe is going to end up in the hands of some very thankful and cute kids, in the form of, obviously, the stuff for the event, but then a bunch of prize support. I'm still trying to source a game store or company that's going to work with me to be able to get the best prices possible. But the idea here is I'm going to shower these kids with gifts and make sure everybody has a great time. If you'd like to participate, please go throw a couple bucks in there. It would mean the world to me. Also, if you want to learn more about playing Slaves to Darkness, go check out Goonhammer. It's an online blog with a YouTube channel now that does awesome tactical tips, painting tutorials, model reviews. If you name it, it is on Goonhammer. Now, I find myself having difficulty in describing the Darkoath tribes, not because the picture is unclear or there's no lore, but because the boundaries are so few. Just pulling a couple numbers off a quick search. For example, when we talk about the word tribe, okay, the Comanche tribe that controlled most of Texas in 1840 were around 40,000 people, compared to small tribes in parts of, say, Africa that max out at like 50 to 100. It's all over the place. And they are as different in depth and culture from one another as nation states are. And so it's important when I mention, the word tribe throughout this discussion, referring to fantasy tribes, just be sure to note that it's up to you to articulate what that means. Right? Write the lore for your own tribe. How big are they? Where are they? What are their resources? What's their natural environment trying to kill them with? And in the vastness of the mortal realms, it's probably fair to say someone did things the way that you're describing. It's just that in English, the word tribe kind of fails to convey the scope of what that could mean. And we've discussed a lot already of what that kind of, how people got here, really. They're just isolated civilizations that turn to the dark gods in varying levels. Sometimes it's to thrive in this new environment. Others just want to get the tools they need to be left alone. But to give a more firm answer than just do whatever you want with your lore, the book does a great job of giving us some examples. In fact, this battletome has a few. These are the tribes of the Great Parch over in Akshi, the Realm of Fire. Why here? Well, to be honest, it's kind of a spot where a lot of the active narrative is happening, which is great for us being able to keep up with our favorite characters. It's also where the Skaven Doom tore a hole into Akshi and a big part of Blight City pierced out. An event that would not be possible without the aid of the Darkoath tribes of the area. With exactly one exception to these tribes, they don't have a mountain of lore to them, but they're all great examples of why tribes fall to chaos and kind of what their motivations are. So let's chat about them. Starting off are the big ones, the one with the most information, the Brands. This tribe is the dominant force in the Adamantine chain, the mountain range that separates Hammerhall Akshi from this new Skaven city. So this dude is right in the action. It's said that his tribe is partially made up of remnants of an ancient Akshi warrior tribe known as the Brands, which, if you know your AOS lore, is the same tribe that featured in Red Feast when Korgus Cole initially tore the hole open to the Realm of Chaos and Khorne entered Akshi, but also the same tribe that Vandus Hammerhand, hero of the Stormcast, would be born to in his mortal life. This tribe, the Brands back in the day, was shattered, like I said, as Khorne entered the realm, and so their tribe kind of just scattered to the winds and tried to live lives with other tribes as much as they could. The Brands, as they are now, is led by the enigmatic Gunnar Brand. Now, he has a whole novel that is on my TBR list to be read. It's on my next one up. So I'll do a dedicated video on him once I finish it. But to be honest, there's not a lot of depth of his lore here in the Battletome. He's a chieftain. At the end of the Dawnbringer campaign, he was sort of our point of view into what the Skaven were planning. Essentially, Gunnar shows up at a meeting of all the tribes that live in his area. They have like a big moot. They all come together. And he starts hearing them brag about poisoning the realms and places of power. That they were all hired by demons to do this. And he starts to put the pieces of the puzzle together and kind of intuits that the Skaven are doing something and using his people, manipulating them to do it. He then runs to confront the Skaven, and he's essentially at ground zero when the Skaven Doom goes off, outrunning the blast and surviving. Now that was the last we saw of him, was him making it out alive after having deduced what was happening. Our next bit of lore, kind of bringing us into the current timeline, is that he is furious. Essentially, after that moment, Gunnar Brand went around to all the tribes of his little section of the Parch, meaning the mountain range, and he just gathered them all together. They were all used. And their rage is specifically pointed at the Skaven, which I adore. He hates them for destroying his homeland, which is more of a personal threat than anything that Order has done in the last century, right? Like the Stormcasts aren't trying to level a mountain range, destroy his home. They may not like Gunnar Brand, but it's not like an extinction level event like having, a whole part of a realm get ripped in half. We'll talk more about that here at the end, but essentially that's the Brand. They are the unifying tribe of the Adamantine chain, and they really hate the Skaven, who are their neighbors. The next tribe are the Tak Blood, T-A-K Blood. And this is the tribe that keeps the Brands on their toes for control. They are supremely gifted fighters. They're led by War Queen Tanari, who is actually a member of Gunnar Brand's group that you can buy, like his actual model set. There's a War Queen in there, and that's her. And while they always clash and are at each other's throats for supreme power, now more than ever, they're joining blades with the Brands because this new situation with Hammerhall on one side and Skavenhell on the other is not good for anybody. This is not a position where any tribe wants to be on their own, and Gunnar seems to have enough of a force of character to be able to lead these tribes. She also represents one of the tribes that was manipulated by the Skaven at the end of the Dawnbringer Crusade. Next are the Scavenge Kings of Iridian, and in the beginning, this tribe was often mocked and derided. Essentially, their method of surviving the long night of chaos was that they would sit and watch other forces fight each other, and then they would go pounce on the winner, take everybody's stuff. Wait until, they're basically opportunistic pack hunters as people. They watch a Bloodbound army and a bunch of Stormcast go at it, and when the fight's over, maybe there's only like 2 or 3 Bloodbound or Stormcast left. We're going to go charge them and take them out, and now we have everybody's stuff. Hence their name, the Scavenge Kings. And so this kind of gained them a reputation as being somewhat underhanded and sneaky, but like any smart person, they leaned in, right? This method of survival worked for them. And so they kept going, like, what else can we do? What else can we plunder? And eventually they found an old dwarven stronghold that was basically destroyed in the Age of Chaos, and they went in and they pillaged every single thing that they could find. They've ridden these opportunities a long way and established themselves as a very powerful tribe in the Parch. The thing is, though, scavenging equipment and weapons and stuff has a roof to it. There's only a finite amount of stuff just laying around, especially if you can confine yourself to a geographical region. And so there's a growing suspicion that their weapons and armor are now coming from a new patron, but no one is quite sure who. Like, their defining feature is having better stuff than the other Darkoath tribes, but that stuff should have run out, which I like. And the last one here is super fun, but man is it a mouthful. The Varlhof of Kotha is the name of the tribe. And these guys just exist to be as metal as possible and to explore how nuts your tribe can be. I love it. They feature not at all in any of the books. They weren't there getting used by the Skaven. These are just other characters who are awesome. First off, they are piratical raiders that go up and down the coasts and rivers of the Adamantine chain, defeating both sea monsters and other tribes are built into their clan ritual. So like defeating a monster might be a rite of passage for a kid or something like that. Seafaring slaves to darkness, they worship Khorne, or at least their imagining of Khorne, as a massive blood-drinking kraken called Kothagrog, which is pretty awesome. One of their defining features of their warband specifically is that leadership changes very quickly, right? And imagine being a champion of your warband being challenged to a duel for leadership, but you're on a boat surrounded by sea monsters. Like, that's kind of the visual we get here. And this warband used to be kept in check by another local Slaves to Darkness warlord, a demon prince actually, who had his fort along the coastline and saw battles with these pirates as just kind of skirmishes with the locals. He didn't really care. But that demon prince fortress fell in the era of the beast when a whole bunch of grots ran over it. And so now the Varlhof of Kotha are free to pillage even more of the Akshi coast without their keepers. And from these, we get a sense of how varied the tribes can be. In several of them, we see, lineages that trace back to the Age of Myth. We see different ways of getting places, of settling grudges, innovating new ways to survive, like scavenging, raiding over the rivers. And one last time, to reiterate it for importance in this series, every single one of the forces that we've described today is on their own path to glory. Gunnar Brand, who hates gifts of chaos and Skaven, is on a path to glory. Again, whether it's to keep your clan at the top like the Brands, or the strength to punch a kraken to death so you can go home, everyone's on a path. So with that said, let's talk about the units involved. Like I said, the Brands are going to get a dedicated video once I finish their book. I just downloaded it on Audible, but we're going to explore the units that you can play with on the tabletop. Starting with the heroes, we have the Chieftain. We're going to start here because it's the most basic leader possible. If you play a full Darkoath army, this is essentially your POV. Each chieftain is a cunning warrior that leads their tribes in matters of war and provision, because part of becoming chieftain is ensuring that the needs of the tribe are being met. You got to do hunting, you got to get water, you have to find food and opportunities to act as a predator so no one thinks that you're prey. There's a lot of things that go on. And that's just the survival aspect, because in most tribes, you're expected to go out and conquer, take something from someone else. Now, chieftain obviously is a very important role in just about any tribe that you would experience, but I also want to throw out there that chieftains are not always the ones in charge. We've seen this in a few different short stories from Black Library, but for example, in a Tzeentch army, there might be a cabal of wizards who counsel them, but the chieftain is still there in the place of leadership for the military aspect, right? Others might guide the tribe. When it comes to battle, we defer to our battle lord. So saying he's at the top is not a unanimous statement. Now, I will slip in here in the Darkoath section, or the chieftain section, that he is the only member of the tribe who knows the secret of the Wilderfiend, who we will talk about later. And I say that's important because knowledge is power. Now, next up is the War Queen. And the War Queen is sort of an amorphous title. Essentially, it's a chieftain, but one that focuses entirely on grander armies. So a chieftain can rally his clan's warriors. They can get a few bows and arrows going, whatever, depending on the size of your tribe, of course. A War Queen can rally nations of tribes. They still have to assert authority and power by besting champions, but these are essentially chieftains plus. And my understanding from reading this is that both chieftains and war queens are a little bit nebulous in terms of hierarchy. For example, it might sound like a war queen is superior to a chieftain because their armies are bigger and they involve multiple tribes, but, as an example, Gunnar Brand is in control of the Great Parch, and there's a war queen in his party below him. They've dueled, they try to fight each other, they could not land a killing blow, they're very evenly matched, and so they exist in this nebulous state as uneasy equals. And so my point is, there's not ranks. Have whoever you want to be in charge. For me, I choose the War Queen every time, because even though she's a mortal, she exudes the same deity level girl boss energy that like Marathi and Alariel do. But the point is, pick your favorite leader. Next up are the Marauders. These are the lowliest tier of warriors in the entire book. Like the whole book, Slaves to Darkness. They represent the endless masses of people pressed into service and ordered around by Archaon or a local warlord. Most of them are descendants of those who were left on the wrong side of Azir by Sigmar when he betrayed and fled them. And in order to survive, the Marauders, like everyone else, had to make these pacts with Chaos factions. But they keep theirs minimal, and that's really a big factor of what separates Darkoath from the Slaves to Darkness other rest of the army, is that they keep their commitments to the Chaos gods minimal. A Chaos warrior is clad head to toe in armor that's infused with powers and blessings of the gods, whereas a Darkoath Marauder is much more reserved in their pledges. Instead of fully dedicating themselves to a life of violence in Archaon's armies, they make short-term deals with the Chaos gods. The night before battle, they take a small stone, called an oath stone, and they essentially carve a promise into it, an oath to fulfill. Should the god that they are beseeching the favor of be interested in this goal, they may gift the warrior strength or resistance to pain or whatever they need to achieve the thing that they're promising. Now, they aren't fully juiced all the time like a Chaos warrior is, but they also are not bound to a hellish fate like them, so it's kind of a trade-off. Marauders get to go home at the end of the day when the job is done. So let's say you have your oath stone, you put, I'm going to kill the enemy warlord with my own axe, and you cut your hand to seal the pact in blood. You've just made a dark oath, because you're a Darkoath tribesman, and then you do it. You get to live another day. You get the power boost from doing that. The gods enable you to go out there and punk the enemy hero, and then it dissipates. But essentially, that's what the oaths of the Darkoath War Scrolls are. The rules you see online where they have to achieve a certain thing to get a bonus. It represents the collective promises that they've made to the gods the night before, and when that achievement is unlocked, they swell in power. Next up are the Savagers, and this is a newer unit that introduced here, and I like them quite a bit. There's sadly a very small footnote about them in the battletome, but what we get is that they are essentially marauders that have kind of become addicted to fulfilling oaths. They're each brutal warriors. They're super fit, super killy, but they love the boost of strength and I guess personal achievement that they get from a job well done. So these are always the first ones to make the biggest oaths, dark oaths, with their oath stones, and also the most frequent of them. Now, oftentimes, Savagers, when they are kind of fed up with how slow a tribe might be moving to war because they're not getting to make enough oaths for their liking, these are the ones who kind of peel off every once in a while and go to the Varenspire to see if they can get noticed by Archaon. To put it simply, think of them as heavy infantry marauders, right? They hit harder, they're a little tougher, because they're drifting away from that neutrality with the Chaos Gods. They're getting more and more into the path to glory. After them are the Fell Riders, and they represent yet another strain of marauders, but this time on horseback. And while that is simple enough, there's a little bit in here that I love, and basically they say that Fell Riders and their mounts live almost exclusively on hunted meats, which means horses that have developed a taste for flesh. After years of training, the rider and the mount can essentially move as one, favoring hit and run attacks with spears or lances. They're notoriously hard to pin down, which frankly is how they survived. Tribes that invest heavily in horses are ones that are dedicated to being mobile, to either intercept Chaos's enemies or just escape whatever brutality Archaon has designated for their particular area. And the last unit in the Darkoath lineup are the Wilderfiends, a very peculiar monster with the Darkoath moniker. And, I read their section like 2 or 3 times. To put it as simply as I can, a Wilderfiend is like a very specific kind of chaos spawn, formed from a previous champion, chieftain, or war queen that hangs around their old tribe as both a guardian and devil. The longer version is that it's hard to be a chieftain and never fail an oath, but if you do, becoming a Wilderfiend may be in your future. The way that they're described physically is very similar to a spawn until it comes to their behavior. A normal spawn is just a gibbering mess of flesh with no mind or whatever. You just kind of herd them into battle, point them towards an enemy, and they'll go off and eat something. But a Wilderfiend hangs around its old tribe and becomes both a spiritual guardian and also like a boogeyman. If the gods decide a tribe is not doing enough, they may have their Wilderfiend attack it in the middle of the night, right? The Babadook comes into town and takes a kid away because the gods are unhappy, which is obviously a punishment. That makes it a boogeyman, but if that same tribe goes to war and they pray to their ancestor spirits the night before or something like that, the Wilderfiend will follow them and support them, acting like a spiritual manifestation of the tribe. It's their guardian, their protector, which makes them a hero, monster, totem type thing. Now, most tribes do not know that this monster is a former chieftain. The chieftain now knows, because oftentimes the new chieftain has to stand in front of and get approval from the Wilderfiend, and he's the only Darkoath that can summon the monster. And so for the overwhelming majority of a tribe, they don't know that this monster permanently exists. They just see it as an avatar of their deity strolling with them into battle, reinforcing that they're doing the right thing, and also acting as a boogeyman to keep them on the straight and narrow when they're at home. So the monster exists as both an asset to the tribe, but also in its shadow, nudging it more and more to do the bidding of the Chaos Gods. You can make sacrifices to the Wilderfiend, and it will share the blessings of chaos with the tribe, which is kind of how it works on the table. You just keep track of things that die near it, and then you can kind of redistribute those souls or whatever into giving you cool buffs. And I just try to imagine, like, one of my favorite characters in all of fiction is the boogeyman, Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas. And I'm just trying to imagine, like, as a kid, the boogeyman scares you, but then as an adult, when your friends and your family are all about to die, imagine the literal Oogie Boogeyman popping out onto the battlefield and killing everybody. Everyone who's ever wronged you, and it's just you and your family left. That's intense. That is a day. I feel like you would be totally warranted to look at your mom and be like, so, like, is the Easter Bunny real too? Like, what are we doing here? What else we got? And so I want to end this discussion, like I end all of mine, by asking the question, why is this cool? And I have a little bit of a different idea for how to do this. I mean, The things that I could say about the Darkoath units are the same stuff that I say about all the Chaos stuff. I love the Path to Glory. I love the Dark Secrets. I love the Promises, the Oaths. I think it's all really neat. But in this ending of a video, I want to talk about how different tribes can be. And essentially, I'm going to give you a questionnaire. If you're trying to write the lore for your own Darkoath tribe, these are some of the questions I want you to consider. First off, how big is it? Could be 5 to 10 people. It could be up to 40,000. You choose. How into chaos are they? Are they like the Brands, who kind of spurn chaos gifts until the last second and they try to do everything with pure physical might? Or are they just super into it? Who's in charge? You got maybe a cabal of wizards, you have a war queen, a chieftain, some combination thereof. You can make your own thing up and be like, this is a triumvirate of tribes that came together and now you have 3 essential leaders. Get creative there. The next question to ask is, where are they in the mortal realms? Because your literal environment is going to shape a lot of how you do things. For example, if you have a lot of water, they're going to be seabound. If you live in thick forests, you're going to have different homes than someone who lives in the desert. But the environment dictates what kind of threats that your tribe is trying to avoid or survive against. My next question would be, how do they sustain themselves in that environment? So, like our tribe next to the water, pirates. Just become raiders up and down the coast. That makes complete sense. In the desert, they're likely nomadic. In the forest, they could be static or nomadic. You choose. Does your tribe have a Wilderfiend? And if so, who knows about it? Does your tribe know the full Pantheon and call them by name? If not, how do they interpret the Pantheon and Archaon? And this was a fun thing we got when Warcry first dropped, is that all these Chaos warbands and their own weird eccentricities all viewed the Chaos gods differently. And they didn't even use the same names like Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, whatever. They would have their own and essentially overlay worship of the Pantheon on top of it, which is so interesting. Just like we had, the Khorne is actually a kraken, blood-drinking kraken for that one example. You could do all of that, and you don't even have to have all 5 of them. You could just say, we worship Tzeentch and Slaanesh. We call them something else, and the other 2 we don't care about. Any combination you want is on the table. Does your tribe descend from anyone notable, or do you want their origins to be a part of this at all? I mean, it could just be scattered collections of people, or like the Brands descended from a notable tribe in history. And lastly, how do they feel about the other factions near them? One of the things I love about this book is the idea of Gunnar Brand despising Skaven above all. Because if you think about the way Aqshy is set up now, you have on one side the Skaven, army horde, Rift of Chaos, Skaven Blight. On the left side, you have Hammerhall Aqshy, and right in the middle is a mountain range that separates them. The forces of Hammerhall Aqshy are rushing to that mountain range to start building defenses, and the tribes of that mountain range hate the Skaven probably as much, if not more, than the forces of Order. So it makes for a very strange wall separating 2 of the most important narrative juggernauts that are going on in the story right now. Their position is interesting just because of their neighbors and who they hate over one or the other. And I find that interesting, so I would ask the same thing of your tribe. Maybe yours has a good working relationship with the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, because you go out, you hunt people, you bring a bunch of dead bodies back, and sure, we got nothing else to do with the bones. We'll take the skulls for a temple or something, but you can have the corpses. Sure, pay your tithe, as an example. And so, friends, I want to leave you with those thoughts to design your own tribe. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have one written out, or at least based on those questions, please leave it in the comments down below. As far as my favorite unit from among these, the Wilderfiend is absolutely my favorite, because I love the idea of this duality of being like our tribe's guardian spirit, but also like their tormentor, right? Like somewhere between guardian angel and Babadook. I like to get right up in there. Inside you, there are 2 wolves, and those are my 2. Anyway, friends, I would love to hear your thoughts. What is your favorite unit that we talked about today? Leave it in the comments down below along with your tribe lore, and I will talk to you in my next video. And happy wargaming to you.